The Steam Next Fest is sort of like the Pizza Hut demo disc of the modern era, except that now you can curate what's on your demo disc, and you can play as many demos as you want, and you can buy as much pizza as you want because you're an adult and there's no one to tell you no. Shifting away from the incredibly flimsy metaphor, I love the Steam Next Fest, and each year I try to play as many demos as I can. In this video, I'll be talking about and reviewing every single demo I played, all 20 of them. For each demo, I'll give my brief impressions, and instead of a numerical rating, I'll give each demo a recommend or not recommend based on whether I think you should check it out. I'll also give each demo a won't buy or will buy based on whether I'm planning on buying it after getting a little taste of what it has to offer. Hey there, it's me, your second favorite, and today I'd like to talk about Steam demos. If you said that this video was just a thinly veiled excuse to talk about Esoteric Ebb, then you wouldn't be entirely incorrect. I've been following the development of this game for a while, eagerly anticipating its release, and with the demo finally out, I can say that it is entirely living up to my expectations. Esoteric Ebb is a narrative CRPG that takes most of its UI and mechanical inspiration seemingly from Disco Elysium. The way I've seen it mostly described is Disco Elysium meets D&D, and that descriptor is pretty apt. The game sees you playing a cleric, or possibly a cleric, who wakes up in a lich house after seemingly dying. You have to journey around the nearby city of Norvik to attempt to figure out what job you were here to do, and eventually complete that task. The game itself is fantastic. While it has similar systems to Disco Elysium, like aspects of your personality speaking to you and providing you with information, it also takes a lot from D&D 5e. Our main skills are the same ability scores from the tabletop role-playing game. Certain roles can be given advantage if completing them under good conditions, and disadvantage under bad ones. And you can even gain feats by completing quests and working through problems with your personality. You can find and equip gear which adjusts these stats while worn, and there is a massive world with tons of people to harass and conversations to have. The best thing about Esoteric Ebb is that the demo includes the first full day of the game. It doesn't stop you from playing until you've completed that day, but there are not railroads here. There are no signposts telling you that you can't use this feature in the demo or places that you can't go. If you're really interested, you can just start another playthrough and create a new build to see all the stuff you didn't see the first time around. It also took me around 6 hours to complete the first full day, which is just an insane playtime for a free demo. Where Esoteric Ebb really shines is its writing, though. A lot of the games that are currently in development or have already released are trying to fill the shoes of Disco Elysium. Some of those have succeeded at doing their own things, and I think Esoteric Ebb does as well. It's very clear that Ebb isn't trying to be Disco Elysium light, but to put a new spin on the formula. But it's also the only disco-like, for lack of a better term, that has lived up to that game in my eyes thus far. Its world is both grounded but magical at the same time. Its writing is darkly whimsical but also serious and down-to-earth when necessary. One of my favorite features of the game so far is the ability to use the Behold action on characters. This allows you to complete an optional role to inspect different pieces of hidden information about the person. Every character uses a different skill check based on their personality. Getting a natural 20 reveals a ton of info about the character, and on a natural 1, nothing. It's a very small optional feature, but really sets Ebb apart from the rest of the games in this space. It also provides a ton of player agency, making the audience feel like they're finding out information they aren't supposed to know, which is always a worthy reward. Ebb is easily one of my most anticipated games right now. I would both recommend checking out the demo, and I will be buying this one on release. And as of writing this, the developer has announced on Twitter that the game launches March 3rd, so go check it out.
I once knew a spy. She was brilliant.
Since I just talked about a disco-like, it feels appropriate to immediately talk about Zero Parades for Dead Spies. This game is the newest project from Zaum, the studio that created Disco Elysium. Of course, the situation isn't that simple because the original creators of the world and game were ousted from the company after the release of the project. Most of these people have splintered off to form their own companies and are working on games as spiritual successors to the critical success that is Disco Elysium. Even that is still far too simple of an explanation because the situation is very complicated. Regardless, supporting a company that ousted the creators of a game and then stole their intellectual property is probably pretty unethical for a myriad of reasons. Because of that, I don't have much intention of actually purchasing this game on release, though I did at least want to check out the demo to see what I was missing. And I have to say that I didn't entirely hate the game. Zero Parades puts you in the shoes of a spy who was part of a horrifically failed mission 5 years ago. They're now being given one more chance to come back and redeem themselves within the organization known as the Opera. The main character's codename is Cascade, and much like Disco Elysium, Cascade has different personality aspects in her head that she wrestles with. We can equip items to adjust these stats, we can roll checks in dialogue to try and influence events, etc. There's definitely something missing from the game. From what I played of the demo, it didn't have a ton of feeling. While I do think there's obviously still talented people working at Zaum, I'm afraid Zero Parades just wasn't working for me. A lot of the dialogue felt hollow, and the personality voices in particular felt pretty bland. Many of them tended to blend together to the point where I often couldn't distinguish which one was speaking to me. This is worsened by the now incredibly small UI images for these personality traits that also just happen to blend together. The narrator voice also just isn't that great, especially compared to the great Lenval Brown.
This was the human game, and he played it poorly. Time to give up his sea.
The writing as a whole just feels like it's trying a bit too hard, and I can't really tell what it's trying to do. It's trying to be something, but I'm not sure that it knows what it's trying to be. Disco Elysium felt like a game that was incredibly informed in what it wanted to be. Zero Parades feels sort of lost and monotonous. I will say that the art direction is particularly inspired. The intro cutscene with the monochromatic liquid was gorgeous and really felt like a completely new vibe from the studio, not something just different, but inspired. A new system has been introduced though that I did also enjoy. When taking certain actions or picking certain pieces of dialogue in the game, you can generate anxiety, delirium, or fatigue. These bars increase over the course of the game with your character's state, and once they reach their max, you can pick one skill associated with these states to decrease. So you don't just die like in Disco Elysium if your states are depleted, you take a constant penalty to your rolls. The setting is interesting, and maybe there will be more of a hook once the full game is released, but I wasn't entirely enthralled quite yet. Overall, I can't say the demo was bad. In fact, I think it's far better than I expected from the studio, and probably better than most mainstream games being released today. I would recommend checking out the demo, mostly because it is an interesting game, but I'm not sure if I'll personally be buying this one on release. And for the last disco-like that I'll be talking about, Celestial Return. Celestial Return takes a lot of new spins on the Disco Elysium successor genre. First of all, it's set in a cyberpunk future. Everything is more gritty, a bit more angry and heightened, far less bleak and dour. There is still introspection, with the main character's insights chiming into conversations every so often, but this certainly isn't trying to be the tour de force that Disco Elysium was. All in all, Celestial Return is just a bit more action movie stylized than the games that it takes inspiration from. If Esoteric Ebb is Disco Elysium meets D&D, then Celestial Return is Disco Elysium meets Blade Runner. The writing is a bit less high bar as well. There's just a few things that I noticed that were a bit too overt for my taste. There wasn't a lot of subtlety from what I experienced in the demo, but hey, maybe that's what the developer was going for. I will say that the world itself is pretty interesting and doesn't feel like it's ripping from any sci-fi or future dystopian worlds that I've seen. There's a lot of interesting original concepts here that it seems ready to explore. The mechanics, though, do attempt to carve out a new path, especially with the dice system. Instead of games like Disco or Ebb having systems where your stats add a modifier to the dice roll, everything is based on the dice you have. You can equip some items which add modifiers to your rolls, but the dice are essentially telling the tale. Every optional action that you take in combat requires a roll. It gives you a target that you're supposed to try and hit. You can then add up to 4 dice to the roll, but once you use these dice, they are gone for good. You have to be careful where you spend your dice because you could easily get in a situation later where you have no dice to roll and you're just screwed. Dice also come in different shapes and sizes. Some add modifiers to your rolls, some subtract from your rolls. It all depends on the dice that you're using at any given time. The system is pretty unique and sets Celestial Return apart from other games in its genre. Overall, I quite enjoyed my time with it. The art style is really intriguing with lots of high contrast colors and environments. I'm definitely interested in the world and the cyberpunk narrative that they're trying to spin, so I would recommend checking out the demo, and I will be getting this game on release. As much as I would like to, I couldn't only talk about disco likes for the entirety of this video, so let's start with something I really enjoyed, Gambonanza. This game is a roguelike that's built around chess. It has a very similar structure and style to Balatro, only that we're playing small games of chess instead of hands of poker. You start out with 3 random pieces gifted to you by the game. You win each round by defeating all of the enemy pieces on the board, you and the enemy taking turns one after the other. Defeating enemy pieces earns you cash, and just like in Balatro, you earn more cash based on interest. The currency can be spent in between rounds at the shop. You can buy permanent chess pieces, which basically function like jokers from Balatro, and alter the way that your entire run functions. One in particular that was useful made the enemy skip their turn whenever I captured their piece with a pawn, often allowing me to run much of the board. You can also buy chips, which basically function like packs, giving you a random assortment of pieces or permanent pieces. The gameplay is very addicting, tapping very well into that one more run feeling that so many roguelikes in this genre need. The rules and mechanics are also simple enough to understand, giving the game a good amount of mass appeal. It also seems like creating game-breaking builds would be very satisfying in this game. It doesn't have the same appeal as Balatro because you aren't exactly getting the number higher, but just completing rounds. I can see it having a sliver of its success though because the game is designed so well. It looks very good and has a lot of potential to create something very crunchy and addicting. I would recommend checking out this demo, and I will be buying it on release. When I was a youth, I absolutely loved Scott Pilgrim, and by extension, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. So naturally, I was very excited to see a sequel announced. Scott Pilgrim EX is a side-scroller beat-em-up, and though it isn't being developed by Ubisoft Montreal like the original game, it is being developed by Tribute Games, who are sort of modern masters of beat-em-ups, putting out games like TMNT Shredder's Revenge and Marvel Cosmic Invasion. EX is a pretty short demo, but manages to capture the feeling that I got when I played the Scott Pilgrim beat-em-up all those years ago. The pixel art is fantastic, with incredibly loud and busy scenes that evoke so much world and community all at once. Characters bouncing up and down and talking in activities while you beat up beach vegans in the foregrounds. Anamanaguchi is back for the soundtrack as well, which really gives the game a helping hand in capturing that atmosphere. The game's humor is on point as well, with the game's story taking place across space and time, means that it's going completely off the rails and not really trying to stay grounded, which is totally fine with me. The game also has co-op support, which I did not get a chance to try out, but should bring back that feeling of playing the original with your friends. Overall, this demo is very promising, capturing the original atmosphere of the first game, but also extending its mechanics and story into something larger and wider. Controls are good, soundtrack is great, and I'm very excited to be checking this out. I would recommend playing the demo, and I will be buying this on launch on March 3rd. Replaced is a game that shows a lot of promise, but that I'm not sure has completely sold me yet. The main character is an AI trapped in a human body being chased and hunted down in an alternate 1980s America. The game is a side-scroller, meaning that we can only travel back and forth and vertically. It's not traditionally a beat-em-up, and I would put its combat closer to something like Arkham Asylum rather than Streets of Rage. When fighting enemies, we can attack and do short combos. Small indicators appear above enemy heads when they're about to attack. We can parry these attacks and counterattack. We can also dodge, but obviously this doesn't give us the advantage of getting quick hits off on the enemy. We also get access to an ability that's available early in the game for the demo. Once the bar at the bottom left corner of the screen is full, we can instant kill one enemy on the field. This doesn't work on larger bosses, obviously, but is really good at thinning out the herd. The combat overall is pretty good, though I do hope the full game adds some more complexity to it because it's pretty bare bones. The rest of the gameplay is made up of solving puzzles and traversing different environments. I will say that Replaced looks gorgeous. The realistic 3D backgrounds juxtaposed with the pixel art characters gives the game a very distinct look. Most of the story is also delivered through memos in the game, which I found to be pretty engaging. The little time that the demo does give you with the game doesn't give you much in terms of world though, but it certainly hooks you into figuring out what the hell is going on. I was really enthralled by the game's look, and I'm certainly interested to see if the full project can push this early idea forward. I certainly would love to see more verticality from the game moving forward, even like a level set in a tower where you're just climbing the entire time and fighting enemies on each floor. I would recommend the demo for Replaced and might check it out on release. If you've seen my videos before, you know that I love a good clicker/incremental game. While most of the genre ends up being pure trash that's just trying to make a quick buck on an easy formula, a few games have managed to rise above this and create something incredibly addicting. Cookie Clicker, Universal Paperclips, Asbury Pines, Melvor Idol, etc. Scritchy Scratchy's demo made me incredibly excited and made me think it might be my next addiction. The game sees us playing a character who is currently working at a day job as a dishwasher. We can wash dishes for a few bucks, but the real money comes from buying scratch-off tickets. If you've ever bought a scratch-off ticket and thought, man, I just wish I could do this permanently forever, then this game is for you. You buy scratch-off tickets and gamble on getting bigger winnings each time. The catch is that the more you scratch off certain tickets, the more they level up. This increases the payouts from those tickets and effectively makes the odds better. You can also increase your luck to literally make the odds of each ticket better. Of course, payouts are upgraded as you move up the catalog in tickets. You can buy all sorts of upgrades like an auto scratcher that completes the tickets for you, a fan that blows the tickets on the table into the scratcher. You can even upgrade your scratching coin to make it more effective. The whole thing is just designed really well. There's even a prestige system that comes into play on the final ticket, where getting 3 skulls means you're killed and must sacrifice your jackpot points in the afterlife for permanent upgrades. I was completely enthralled as soon as I started the game, and have long since wondered why no one has capitalized on the dopamine rush that one gets from scratching little tiny paper boxes in the hopes of seeing a big blue diamond. Well, I have to wonder no longer, because Scritchy Scratchy is here. I would recommend this demo, and I will be checking this out on release. Titanium Court is a very strange and beautiful game. I will try to explain its concepts as best I can, but I would recommend just playing this one because it's very abstract on purpose, and yes, it is worth your time. The game sees you playing a woman who one day enters an abstract court after wandering through a broken world. This court is full of strange characters who don't want to answer any of her questions directly. We quickly find out that the court itself is swimming through a void that at different tides will shift and move. This is represented by the battlefield, an ever-changing array of grids that your court is located on. The game is played in 2 phases. The first phase plays much like Bejeweled or any sort of match 3 game. We match 3 tiles on the board and they disappear, with the board moving around to accommodate. Once we run out of moves, we then enter the battle phase. Here we take any of our resources that we gained during the first phase and use them to send out soldiers and farmers, both to attack the neighboring castles threatening to take us out and to harvest nearby resources. The game's overall structure is set up like a roguelike. We take on these increasingly difficult battles, moving up a larger board of tiles, attempting to get out of this place and back to the player's home. The game's story and style are incredibly nebulous. This is both very intriguing for the player, but also an extremely unique blend that sets Titanium Court apart from other games. It juxtaposes a medieval fantasy tone and style with an often, at times, contemporary one, using pixel art street signs to note dead ends or baseballs being hit to showcase knocking it out of the park. Characters in the court are dressed in full suits, and the game's choice of color makes just about everything pop. This game looks so damn good, and it's especially difficult in the modern day to really stand out amongst the crowd, but Titanium Court does it very well. I am incredibly excited to see this full project. I do recommend trying out the demo, and I will be buying the game on release. Another game I played religiously in high school was Super Meat Boy. It had to have been one of the first PC games that I actually owned. I was enraptured by its challenge, tight design, and simple world. Super Meat Boy 3D aims to bring this experience into another dimension. The same challenge, the same style, but just more fidelity and more room. It should be noted that Edmund McMillan is not working on this game, and I don't believe has worked on any Meat Boy game since creating the original. He did just release his incredibly successful new game, Mugenics, though. That being said, I was pleasantly surprised with Super Meat Boy 3D, at least with the short demo that I got to play. The game is essentially the same concept as the original. We have to quickly proceed to the end of the level to rescue Bandage Girl before Dr. Fetus grabs her. We achieve this by jumping over chasms, wall jumping back and forth, and avoiding the dangerous traps around each level. If we run into one of these hazards, we immediately die. Completing a level allows us to see all of our previous runs play at once. The game flourishes on its difficulty, completing short levels without getting hit or falling even once, repeated tries over and over again to try and get a good run. Each level even has A+ ranks, which you can achieve by completing the level in a certain amount of time. For the most part, I think the game is pretty fun. While I think the first few levels were pretty easy, it doesn't take the demo long to ramp up the difficulty. The only real complaint that I have with the game is that the fidelity is maybe a bit too much for me. I think the team could have reasonably made a Super Meat Boy 3D while also keeping a stylized aesthetic. That would have at least made the game seem a bit more special, but in its current state, the game just looks sort of saturated. They certainly aren't, but the assets just look so smooth that they feel like store-bought. And some of the controls can be a little clunky. It just feels a bit less based on precision than the original game did, which is kind of to be expected by transplanting the game into 3D. For the most part though, I did enjoy my time with the game. The challenge was fun, the spirit was mostly there, and I'm interested. I would recommend the demo for Super Meat Boy 3D, and I'll probably check it out on release. MMO98 is a simulator game that sees you trying to manage an MMORPG company in the early days of the genre. At the beginning of the game, you launch an online game of your choosing and have to watch the game to ensure that servers keep running, bugs are constantly fixed, and that interest in your game stays high. Money stays pouring in as people keep buying the game, and your fanbase grows as more players are brought in. You can buy upgrades with the money that might increase the effectiveness of your bug squashing or increase the revenue that you get from sales of the game. You can also buy new servers to decrease the load on your servers, reduce ping for other players, or provision servers to ensure the game doesn't crash. The amount of players that buy the game is determined by the hype that you have at any given time, which can be increased by sending out marketing blasts. Some of your funds can be diverted into development on a sequel. Each round of development increases the game's stats, but it also costs far more each time. Once you release the sequel, you get a new batch of dedicated fans that will always purchase your next game, and a certain amount of terabytes of data that you've harvested from players. The data can be used to get permanent upgrades in between each release of a new game. MMO 98 is a neat idea in theory, and I really enjoy its visual style. The Windows 98 UI has a pretty good aesthetic and firmly plants you in the time period that the simulation is set. That being said, the game progresses pretty slow and gets very repetitive very quickly. You essentially just monitor servers and ensure they stay up, provision new servers and release patches to squash bugs, and then wait for the money to pour in. It just takes a bit too long, making the whole thing kind of a slog. I was intrigued at the beginning of the game, but that intrigue sort of wore off about 45 minutes in or so. The game would be a lot better if there were more knobs and controls that you had over the quality of the game and its management. Maybe some sort of measure of community happiness that could be changed by managing the forums. Maybe a balance patch that you could release that would increase hype and player happiness. As it stands, there just isn't enough to keep the player going once they're clued into the central loop. I wouldn't really recommend trying the demo unless you're really interested in its concept, and I probably won't be buying this on release. Thank you for your application reminds me a lot of Papers, Please. The game sees you playing a character who has had a lot of difficulty getting employment recently. It takes place in a world where finding employment is a ridiculously difficult process, full of arbitrary interviews, sometimes taking 15 follow-up meetings to even get a rejection notice. Our character gets a job as an interviewer, and we are tasked with seeing new possible recruits. We have to follow a list of ever-evolving demands on the right-hand side of the screen, orders that require applicants to have a degree from a specific institution or a certain amount of work experience. We generally have to provide a reason for rejection if we notice something not adding up and send them on their way. The game starts to get really dystopian as the demo progresses, though. At a certain point, there's a break-in and people are attacked after a worker had a breakdown. We then have to begin taking personality exams showing that applicants have breakdown thresholds below a certain amount. As employees, we also have to keep a cool head, and our breakdown threshold is regularly measured. You must use your meager salary to purchase pieces of equipment that lower this threshold and ensure that you don't get fired for being too much of a mental risk to the company. The demo is pretty good overall. Like I said before, it's very inspired by Papers, Please. The world is sort of changing around you and the gameplay mechanics are adjusting to update in accordance with the changes in the world, but I can't say that I didn't have fun with the game while I was playing it. I think it's a different style as well, clearly trying to comment on a world that has grown far more cold and critical when it comes to employment. It feels bad to be so distant, following mechanics that will enrich your work, but at the expense of others. It's a slightly uncomfortable game, but one with mechanics that are interesting enough to keep you invested. My only real complaint with the game is that a lot of the writing is a bit broken. I'm not sure if it was just translated poorly, but most of the things that people say after they're rejected are pretty clunky. If you liked Papers, Please, I would recommend checking out the demo, and I probably will be checking this out on release. The Last Salvage Squad is a very short demo for a first-person shooter set in a seemingly apocalyptic future. A group of what appear to be androids are attempting to save the remaining humans, which I believe are maybe underground or something? I'm not sure. There isn't a ton of story information in the game, but the Last Salvage Squad has a very distinct visual style. The whole game is cloaked in this heavy red filter. The only things that aren't in this black and red style are our character, the UI, and our weapon. The game also uses a classic FPS style, with all of the enemies and characters appearing as flat art and slightly turning with the main character's perspective to always face them. I like the look of the game a lot, and visually it manages to separate itself from a lot of other games on the market. That being said, what the game has to offer currently is just a bit bland. The demo lets you play a few missions, ones where you're attempting to defeat a certain amount of enemies in a desolate city. At the end of the demo, you're allowed to play one mission from later in the game where you are defending warheads, and then you can endlessly play a survival mission. The gameplay is mostly fine, and movement does feel good. Accuracy is way more important than firepower because most enemies move very quickly. But I just felt that by the time the demo was done, I wasn't really totally sold on the game. I think it's a decent starting point, but there just wasn't enough there to really sell me into buying it. I would recommend checking out this demo, but I probably won't be buying it on release. Lootbound is a turn-based roguelike game that's presented as an incredibly difficult board game, almost Jumanji style. At the beginning of a run, you pick a character, only one of which was available in the demo. You then take this character across a large board made up of different paths. Some of these paths are short battles, turn-based confrontations where you utilize the different abilities at your disposal to defeat the enemies ahead. Some rooms refill a character's health, some rooms allow you to recruit another party member, some rooms allow you to roll for new equipment or upgrades. A large portion of the game is based around the player's gear. After every battle, you gain different pieces of gear that you can choose from. Every character in your party can be equipped with gear in a Resident Evil 4 style inventory system. You have to rotate equipment to fit it into your slots and ensure that you get as many bonuses as possible. One of the coolest things about the system is that you can get more rare pieces of equipment that give buffs to other items that are equipped around it. This causes you to completely revamp your entire inventory to ensure you're getting the most from your gear, and essentially trying to create a broken build that will melt anything in front of you. I really like this game and found its loop overall really addicting. Getting builds on my characters to work properly, struggling and fumbling, and getting a new piece of gear that causes me to throw the whole thing out and start over, trying to make my party members just as strong as my main character. The whole thing is really good. After completing a map, you'll actually be able to select and build the type of boss that you want to fight at the end of the run. Each map's completion will see you choosing a part of the Sentinel that you will face in the final room. It's a really interesting system, and its more unique parts add a lot to the genre that has had a ton of different projects in the last few years. It helps that the game looks beautiful as well. Really detailed pixel art helps propel Lootbound to another level. In particular, the resting segments are gorgeous. Watching our characters enjoy a silent and dark night around a fire just sets a beautiful tone for rest. I would definitely recommend checking out the demo for Lootbound, and I will be checking it out when it releases. I did not expect to enjoy Outbound, and I ended up shocked that I enjoyed it as much as I did. Outbound, on its surface, appears to be a standard cozy survival game. You play a character who is heading to a local park for a good trip of exploration and camping. You drive a small camper around and collect materials that help you survive. Berries and food that you can eat to quench your hunger, materials and resources that you can use to craft additions for your RV and upgrade your mobile base. You can seek out landmarks that hold special crafting recipes. You trek through the forest to find campfires. You move through the grass to find caches that hold more supplies. The biggest player here is not progression, but atmosphere. Outbound from the demo is a game that seems to let you go at your own pace, to take in its world and sights and surroundings with a deep breath in and a deep breath out. The landscapes and vistas are a reward just as much as new pieces of equipment are. By progressing through the game, you also unlock new paths of passage, effectively restoring the park as you use it. As the night falls and the sun sets, camping by a crackling fire and recycling some of the litter you found has an oddly satisfying feel to it. It's one of the only games that made me want to just sit in a chair and take everything in for a few moments. That being said, that doesn't mean that the progression here isn't engaging. Marking off landmarks and finding recipes is satisfying. Upgrading your RV is very fun, as towards the end of the demo, you can turn your RV into a mobile base, building a massive second room on top of it. I'd like to test this system once the full game is out and see if it lets you create a 10-room high tower or something. Outbound really isn't the type of game I normally play, but I genuinely found it so engaging. I was sad when I got to certain parts of the demo that wouldn't let me pass because I just wanted to explore more, to find more materials and expand and take in the sights of this beautiful world. I would recommend trying the demo for Outbound, and I will be buying it on release. Everything is Crab is a game that I really want to love. There are so many pieces of it that work for me, but just enough that doesn't. The game is essentially a survivor's like. We wander around a map and try to take out other small creatures in the area. We can eat food either dropped from trees or from enemies that we've destroyed. This food causes us to evolve, and once we gain a new evolution, we can choose a new piece, appendage, or evolutionary ability for our creature to develop. This could be a large set of claws it grows on its front, it could be a hardened shell it uses to defend against attacks, it could be a wolf's sense of prey to allow it to intimidate enemies. These evolutions are used to upgrade your character and make them a more effective hunting and killing machine. The goal, as with any survivor-like, is to last as long as possible. At certain milestones, bosses will seek you out and try to kill you, defeating these nets a ton of evolution points. Now, I was really interested in Everything is Crab because almost everything about it was intriguing to me. I put a ton of time into Vampire Survivors when it came out and found it incredibly addicting. This game almost feels like it's inspired by Spore as a game where you have to evolve and create a new creature over time, and the combinations in creature dynamics prove to be a fertile ground for humor to grow. But even with all that going for it, I just didn't find Everything is Crab clicking after a few runs. Maybe parts of it just weren't as engaging as I wanted it to be. Maybe retrieving rewards wasn't satisfying enough, and maybe upgrades didn't feel as powerful as they should. Regardless, the game just didn't have that final piece. It didn't leave me wanting to play run after run and unlock everything the game had to offer. I might check it out down the line if it gets some really good reviews, but for now, I wouldn't recommend the demo, and I probably won't be buying this on release. Speaking of Vampire Survivors, a new demo for the next game in the Vampire series just released. Vampire Crawlers is a completely different genre, a first-person dungeon crawler as opposed to a survival game, but it's still set in the same world, uses many of the same locations, enemies, and items. The new game's design is fantastic and just as engaging as Vampire Survivors. This time around, we take on different levels of dungeons and engage with encounters in a turn-based system. On each of our turns, we can take actions by playing different cards that we draw from our deck. These cards can contain any variety of items that you probably already know from Vampire Survivors. Weapons like garlic, the magic wand, or the axe, but also other items like bracers or the ring. The combo system allows us to combine card plays to do more damage, play cards in ascending mana cost order, and each subsequent card has a larger and larger effect. Pulling off these combos is incredibly satisfying, and by the time you reach the lower floors, you've expanded your deck enough that you need to think through the options you have in front of you. Throughout each dungeon are also extra rewards that you can pick up. You can get new cards for your deck, you can get gems that slot into cards to upgrade their effects, you can get health refills because your health doesn't naturally refill over time. Each character that you choose to start a run with also has an entirely different ability and character card that they can play. There's just a ton of variety here. Each run feels genuinely different, depending on the cards that you choose upon leveling up, depending on the gems you slot into those cards, depending on the characters that you choose to use. It makes each run unique, and there are a ton of unlocks, even just in the demo, for you to chase. It gave me a very similar feeling that I had when I first played Survivors. That whole one more run motivation is there, and the game's design inherently makes you want to try again. It's why the original game captivated so many. I was excited for the game, but interested to see where the developer would go after Vampire Survivors. I certainly didn't expect a deck-building dungeon crawler, but I'll say that it was definitely the right path to take. I would highly recommend trying out this demo, and I will definitely be buying it on launch. Wanderburg was just a game that really wasn't for me. I won't talk about it too much, but will give some constructive criticism. This is another Survivors-like game, but instead of creating a new creature or playing a vampire slayer, we are controlling an assault tower wandering around a battlefield filled with other moving buildings. We can adjust our tower at the beginning of the game, equipping it with different crews and weapons. I think some of what I didn't like about the game was just that it felt a bit too early for a demo. It's certainly not that polished, and a lot of the menu systems just feel a bit too clunky for me. I do think the idea is good though. The concept of crafting your tower and upgrading it as the game goes on is really cool, but again, the game just wasn't that satisfying. Unlike Vampire Survivors, a lot of the weapons depend on the player aiming to get the damage off on enemies. This sort of changes the entire dynamic of a Survivors-like, and though it does set it apart, it just isn't as ironed out enough to really make this new aspect work. I also just felt like I couldn't get the game to progress. The bosses would almost always kill me no matter what, and I couldn't get strong enough to take them down before they attacked. The concept of Wanderburg is okay, but the execution just isn't entirely there. I would not recommend playing the demo for this game, and I probably won't be buying it on release.
Feel what?
The fire! The fire!
You really felt the fire?
It nearly burned my face!
Here, let me feel your forehead.
The Eternal Life of Goldman is fantastic and is a beautiful platforming adventure game. The tone here is great. It feels like Studio Ghibli mixed with Indiana Jones, classic adventuring, and collecting relics with a ton of whimsy and magic thrown into the mix. This game looks gorgeous. From what I can tell, all of the characters' backgrounds and cutscenes are hand-drawn animation. It looks fantastic and has a style unlike any other platformer I've played. I had to just stop and look at some of the surroundings every once in a while because the aesthetics are so impressive. You can feel the amount of work that went into this game, particularly in the art design. The characters all feel alive. The main character in particular has such good movement, his beard blowing in the wind. It just feels like it's a part of this world. There's a rich and heavy history to the world as well. I noticed some reviews for the demo critique the amount of dialogue in the game, but I actually enjoyed it. The narrative itself is very distinct, and I was very interested in the story the game was trying to tell. As a platformer, the Eternal Life of Goldman is very fun. Neat mechanics are introduced very quickly, like these living platforms that increase in height when you jump and move down when you crouch. The main character also has a cane, which he uses to get extra height on his jump and to take out enemies when he jumps on their heads. This cane can be adjusted though as you gain more parts throughout the game. You can change out its head to have a hook that allows you to grab onto hanging items or moving boxes with rings. The middle can be switched out with a shaft that's more bendy, allowing you to get more height on your jumps. These mechanics set the game apart from other platformers and just makes the whole thing feel like a complete project. If you like platformers, I would definitely recommend checking out this demo, and I will be checking this game out on release. I Won't Let You Level Up in My Goblin Town is an incredibly unique idea, to the point that I'm not even sure what genre to call it. The game sees you playing a goblin that lives in a goblin town in a fantasy world. This village is about to be the starting area for a town of new adventurers. Just like in any MMO or RPG, the prospective adventurers will be using this town to level up, slaughtering all the goblins in the village. Your job is to stop this, but you're not the one actually fighting them. One of the villagers is. Your job is to affect the battle by collecting various items from the town and throwing them at either the goblin or the attacker. You can grab potions that heal or restore MP, weapons or armor that adjust the stats of the character. You can hinder the enemy by throwing weapons that skip their current turn or lower their stats. The game gets even more complex as you unlock more items to use and explore more parts of the town. There are items hidden all over, and you can even bring resources to the blacksmith to make new weapons or shields. This is all complicated by the fact that you can't prepare for battle. You have to do all of this while the fight is going on. You have to run around and craft resources while the adventurer is fighting your goblin friend, so it can be pretty intense. You have to constantly ensure that the goblin doesn't die by healing them, but also try to increase his stats. This whole thing is such a unique idea, I don't even know how to classify it, but whatever it's doing, it's great at. The gameplay loop is really well done, and each battle almost feels like a fast-paced puzzle with multiple different solutions. Unfortunately, the demo isn't long, so I'm interested to see what the full game has in store. The most unique part of the concept, though, is the fact that you're playing the stereotypical adventure starting trope through the lens of the goblins being killed. There's some decent humor baked into this premise, and the whole thing just works really well. I would definitely recommend checking out this demo, and I will be getting this game on release. I'm not sure what 3 versus Cubed is, but I do know 3 things. It's amazing. You should play it, and it feels like it was made for me. In the demo for 3 vs. Cubed, there are essentially 2 demos, one for 3 vs. Cubed, which was seemingly made in a 2023 game jam, and a demo for something called Karen Loves You. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be another section of 3 verses or a completely separate game. In 3 verses, your goal is to find 3 verses from different gods and give them to various poets who are lost in their work. The game is sort of a typing game. You can battle enemies, which really only occurs in one section, by typing out the names of spells that you gather from talking to NPCs. The battle system is pretty simple, but I'm okay with that because the star of this game is the aesthetic and the writing. This whole game uses a beautiful low poly PS1 style that I absolutely love, but there's something genuine about it. The textures have rough edges to them, certain things aren't exactly polished or the same resolution, character models aren't ironed out, it all looks kind of gritty and strange. There's an unsettling feeling coming from the game, even though there's a breakbeat playing in the background. Juxtaposing emotions constantly fight for dominance. The writing is surreal, like a dream within a dream. You grasp for meaning or feeling wherever there is some. I found the story of the second demo to be particularly cutting. It felt very personal. I'm not sure if the developer was putting some of their own experience in there, but the emotions just felt super raw. The game is also extremely funny too. Many moments got a good chuckle out of me. The fish head man speaking Japanese before transporting you to another world, a construction worker that is clearly projecting his own experience onto you, and two friends who are bickering about canned fish, or maybe rice fish, or maybe big fish. 3 Verses is fantastic. I love the style, the soundtrack, the aesthetic, the writing, the mechanics. I definitely recommend checking out the demo, and I will be eagerly awaiting this game's release. Hey there, thanks for watching this video. This is the first video I'm uploading on this second channel, so I really hope that you enjoy it. I should have another one out in the next week or so. I plan to upload more focused video essays on here, but every once in a while it's fun to look at a bunch of games like this. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to this channel because I'm trying to get it off the ground. You can also subscribe to my Patreon where I upload reviews of video game movie adaptations, and you will also be added to this list of amazing people right here. See you next time. Bye, Dad.